Bendicion, Bendicion. This is El Conquistador back with another video. I want to make a video about how to properly greet someone, or more so an elder, but I'll get into the details. There are definitely modern influences and splits between Lukumi and Isheshelagba that have also impacted how we greet others in the religion as a whole, all of which I will get into. The first greeting, which is the most basic, is Bendicion. Bendicion in Spanish means blessing. But I have noticed amongst those who are new to the religion or not raised in the religion, they say the word bendiciones, which means blessings. Now, this is not wrong per se, but it's not traditional. The traditional Cuban Lukumi greeting to all Olorisha or Santeros is Bendicion. And the response by that Santero is Santo. And only a Santero replies with Santo. If the person is not crowned, then you say Bendicion, they say Bendicion back. That's it. Bendicion, Bendicion. So what's the difference between Bendicion and bendiciones, and what is the issue with saying bendiciones? The origin of the word, bendición, the origin of the word bendición, a little background, comes from the slave days, where every morning the overseer or the master or amo, or amo as it's said in Spanish, that's how you say master in Spanish, amo, would have all the slaves gathered out in front of them before the day's work. Before the day's work at sunup, between maybe 4:30 a.m., 5:30 a.m. Of course, during winter months, it's going to be, from sunup to sundown, it's going to be different depending on the seasons. Remember, a slave's work is, from sunup to sundown, and they worked for about 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, having Sundays off because even the Spanish had to adhere to keeping the Lord's Day holy, and we all know there's no work on a Sunday. So trying to keep everything within its proper historical context. Anyways, all the slaves would gather, and they were given their breakfast, which was usually a shot of rum or water and sugar, most likely molasses. That's it. Upon greeting and leaving their masters before they head off to work, each of them would say bendición, or la bendición, or bendición amo, bendición master, blessing master. And the response would have been que Dios te bendiga, may the Lord bless you, or something along those lines that speaks of God's blessing for that day of work for the slaves. Here lies the issue with saying bendiciones to a santero. When you say bendiciones, you are wishing blessings upon that person, upon that santero. But the slaves were not wishing blessings to befall their master. They were asking, here's where it is. When the slave said bendición, not bendiciones, the slave was asking for the blessing of their master. This is the key difference. So when we say bendición to a santero, we are not telling them that we wish them to be blessed. But more specifically, we are asking, instead, we are asking them for their blessing to bless us. More specifically, may the Orisha that sits on your head bless me. And the response from that santero is santo, which literally translates to saint. The idea is that the santero is the living vessel in which the santo or orisha resides, and kind of like speaking for the orisha or the santo that sits on the person's head has acknowledged your petition, has acknowledged your plea, has acknowledged your asking for that blessing. This is why the proper greeting is bendición and not bendiciones. But of course, even when I have explained this to people, they insist or ignore what I say, and they say bendiciones anyway. This could be in conversation, this could be through text. If someone texts me, oh, bendiciones, bendiciones. So I reply, santo, because I know it's not said with any negative intent. This is the universal Ocha greeting. Usually, if a particular santero is across the room who's too far, or there's a group of santeros in a room and you just want to show respect to everyone at once, you cross your arms and with a slight nod of the head, you say bendición. Maybe someone's too far across the room and you know who they are. Hey, bendición, bendición. That's perfectly fine. There have been plenty of occasions where I attend a tambor. I don't know everybody. Maybe I was invited by someone. I'm not going to know everybody in that room. I'm not in the community like that. I do not know everybody. So I usually know one or two people in that entire room. And maybe there's a group of people sitting and I'll cross my arms. If I'm walking around, I'll cross my arms. Bendición. I don't know who has santo and who does not have santo made. And keep in mind, for anybody wondering, when I say santo, for someone who has santo made, I mean they are initiated to that orisha. They are olorisha, just in case anybody's confused. So I will cross my arms and say bendición. I don't know who has santo made, who does not have santo made. So it's a term that you cannot get in trouble because at least you showed respect and acknowledged everyone in the room. And the people who do have santo made will say, they will respond, santo. And those who don't, they should say bendición back. Usually, yeah, I say bendición, they say, oh, hi, nice to see you. The response is bendición. Unless you have santo made, you do not say santo to anyone in any context because you do not have santo on your head. And like I said before, to say santo is to ask of the blessing of that person's santo that they have on their head. But if they do not have santo on their head, then there's no blessing to give per se. Of course, the highest form of respect is to fully prostrate before an elder and that person lifts you off of the floor. The details of which, mofuri bale, yinka, what's said, yada, 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 the details of which are for another video. But this is more so for the verbal interactions that we have between people and the greetings as far as Ocha is concerned. Lukumi Ocha. I'm not talking Sheshe Lagba, at least not right now. And Ifa has their own greetings and physical actions associated with greeting Cuban Babalaos or greeting Yanifas if we're talking in Sheshe Lagba protocols. The second part. A second response that is what I would say is a more modern variant, but just as appropriate, is que oloro nagbeyo, when someone says, or better asks, bendición. And for the most part, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Most people say just bendición, not la bendición. And of course, no one says bendición amo. We're not living in slave time. So it's just bendición. Okay? So if I'm 3 in Ocha and I greet someone who has 4 years or more, I say bendición, and most will say santo, but a rare person may say ki olorun agbeyo, ki olorun agbeyo, ki olorun agbeyo. And sometimes we'll hear or see spelled out ki olorun nagbeyo. It's just whether you put an N in front of the A in agbeyo, nagbeyo, which means may the owner of heaven bless you. Ki, may, olorun, owner of heaven, or just olorun, God, agbe, bless. And the o, Yoruba is such a poetic language. There's a lot of o at the end of things. Orilamio is o. You'll see in Yoruba text, it's o is at the end of words. If it actually has a literal translation, I don't know. So, me saying asking, say bendición or bendición mi mayor, which is another, you want to throw that in there, a little flourish, bendición mi mayor. They may say santo, they may say ki olorun agbeyo, both of which are perfectly fine and acceptable, though ki olorun agbeyo is not as common. Again, this is all just verbalized and this does not include prostrating to anyone. If we're talking about a full foribale or mo foribale or yinka, which is what women do, that what they do is called yinka, then there's different verbalizations for that, different actions for that. This is just simply bendición. That's it. Bendición mi mayor. You cross your arms out of respect. Bendición. Bendición mi mayor. Continuing on. Due to the rise of the initiation of Black Americans since the mid-70s into Cuban Ocha, we know that Walter Eugene King, he was made in 1959, but, you know, for the most part, the mid-70s is where Black Americans are really like taking off with Black Americans. I'm just going to get back onto the text I have here. Due to the rise of the initiation of Black Americans since the mid-70s onward into Cuban Ocha, due to people like Walter Eugene King, Efuntola, the man I just mentioned, who founded Oyotunji, due to the people like the Puerto Rican Asuncion Serrano Obatalao Sahunco. She was a Puerto Rican woman who initiated the most Black Americans into Ocha. And her Obaoriate, who was a Cuban and spoke English, Jose Manuel Guinat, who was made to Oya, his name was Oyadina, and of course, the Black American godchildren of their godchildren, and of course others. You know, it wasn't just 3 people that initiated all Black Americans in the country. But these are 3 very big influences. And of course, even Cristobal Oliana, the one who was made with Walter Eugene King, he was a Black American. I believe he was half Cuban, and he got made in Cuba. And of course, he initiated other Black Americans. So this group of people, this generation of Santeros, they gave birth to their godchildren and so on and so forth to other Black Americans. There was a rise in the desire for a stronger Black identity. We talk about the mid-70s. A rise for a more pure Yoruba identity was born. Now, this is not the case for all Black Americans, as many chose to stick close to the religion as it pertains to Cuba and Cuban Lukumi tradition. But many Black Americans, like Walter Eugene King, the entire legacy of Oyotunji, and other Black Americans chose to implement more purer forms of Orisha practice into their expression of Orisha religion. Just one of these implements, and if you haven't seen my video on Walter Eugene King, please check it out. It's like 2 videos ago now. One of these small implementations was the use of the word and the greeting, which you will hear most Black Americans say today, Alaafia. The word Alaafia literally means peace. The word Alaafia was never used as a greeting at all by Cubans. Alaafia is the only time you'll hear the word Alaafia is when casting obi, is when maybe you're divining to find out what ide the person has. And maybe you hear it in a song for the Orisha, but Alaafia is not used as a greeting. It is not a hello. It's not a Bendicion. Alaafia was never used as a greeting until the Black Power movement towards a pure Black identity in the 70s, with more Blacks being initiated into Orisha religion. There are Black houses, notable ones in Brooklyn, where you won't see anything Cuban, Lukumi. Instead, you'll see more pure Isheshe Lagba. And in Isheshe Lagba, there is no such thing as Bendicion. Most people do not know the history behind the word Bendicion. But with this knowledge of knowing the history of the word Bendicion, I imagine that it only makes those who do say Alaafia want to say Alaafia even more so. I imagine people saying, I ain't asking for the blessing of no slave master. Ain't no santero, my slave master. And I would understand this sentiment. At any rate, the traditional Cuban greeting is Bendicion, not Bendiciones. And the proper response to Alaafia is Alaafia ni. Now, there's a second part to this video that I want to dive into, but I don't want to make this video too long. But this video is specifically about the greetings, just specifically when it comes to Ocha. Like I said, there's more when it comes to Ifa and the physical actions when you salute someone. But this is just that one word, Bendicion, and the other word, Alaafia, and the response. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I definitely want to have part 2 up and running. May God bless you. Peace out.